It was in the late 1990s when Canada's Oberon-class submarines needed to be replaced. So the Navy lobbied the government to buy 4 submarines the British Navy had mothballed, virtually unused, in 1993. At the time of the sale, 1998, these buy-as-is subs had been lying dockside, neglected, for 5 years. Then Canada left them virtually untended for many more months. Jerry O'Keefe was a petty officer assigned to the United Kingdom as Canada prepared to take possession of Chicoutimi in 2001.
We were given old submarines that have been sitting in dry dock or in seawater. In all due consideration, Lloyd, just to give you an idea, the fuel tanks themselves were filled with seawater by the time we got there. Battery banks removed, gauges removed, meters out of calibration.
Is there any hope for these subs? Can Canada make them work?
I believe we purchased 4 lemons, and the only thing you're going to get out of 4 lemons is a glass of lemonade.
Bruce McLean was a submariner and made commander of the Navy in 2004. Now retired, McLean defends taking over the British submarines.
It's not unusual for warships throughout the world to be mothballed from time to time because they're surplus to requirement, and then they can be reactivated.
But isn't it like any engine? You've got to run it.
You have to run it, and it takes time. And certainly we discovered in the reactivation period that there were issues with those submarines that had not been contemplated. The expertise which the British had in that submarine business started to dissipate. So consequently, yeah, I think that while they were alongside during that 3 to 4 year period, things were certainly more challenging when it came to reactivating those submarines in the 98 to 2002 period. But of course, these submarines were really orphans.
When the fire-ravaged Chicoutimi returned to dock in 2004 in the UK, the crew was met and consoled by McLean, then commander of Canada's Navy. Today, he says the fire took its toll on the whole submarine program.
When you had a major fire like we had on board the Chicoutimi, that really put us squarely in the sights. And so it was a very challenging time. And yes, I was concerned whether or not we'd ever see those boats go back to sea again.
9 years later, the Chicoutimi is still not right.
9 years later, the Chicoutimi is on the west coast, and it's in a civilian refit capability now, and we expect that submarine to be out in 2013.
But the Canadian public have been hearing these kinds of optimistic forecasts for a long time.
That's true, and I can understand very much the frustration. I think we are very much at about mile 23 or 4 of this marathon for the last decade. It's going to still be tough. There are still some issues at play.
Those issues are now on the desk of the new commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, Paul Madison. Madison took up his new post in July 2011 and sat down with me for his first TV interview.
In hindsight, then, was it a bad idea for Canada to buy submarines decommissioned by the British and left to sit unused for 5 years or more?
I don't believe it was a bad decision at the time. Did we know that there would be challenges? Yes. We need to remember that when the British built these submarines, they never operated them, and therefore they never actually took them through any deep maintenance cycles or periods. And so we've had to actually kind of learn that. And I can tell you today, Lloyd, that yes, I understand how Canadians must be feeling quite impatient about where we are here. I can tell you that we are at the end of a long beginning. Has it taken longer than we would have hoped and predicted? Absolutely. Absolutely. Nobody feels that more than me, more than our submariners. And I understand why all Canadians, including our officials here in Ottawa, would be impatient.
Critics of Canada's submarine program are more than impatient. They question the very need for submarines at all. Stephen Staples is the president of the Rideau Institute, a research group in Ottawa.
There's other technologies such as sonobuoys and underwater listening nets, and we can do it from aircraft, from satellites, from surface ships. All of those platforms will have a submarine monitoring capability. We don't need to have actually submarines of our own to be able to do that.
Should Canada keep spending billions on these subs, or is it time to junk the program?
Well, it's very appealing to think that, oh, if we just spend a few more dollars, a few more $1 million, we'll actually turn that corner and have those 4 submarines. But it's a fairy tale. It's not going to happen. We're spending millions of dollars on a capability that we don't need and will never actually operate.
With the world's longest coastline, Madison is unequivocal about the need for a submarine capacity.
Canada's a maritime nation. What happens at sea around the world matters. The economy floats. And when there are pressures in that maritime domain brought on by piracy, by illegal activity, by regional conflict, if Canada's going to stand up alongside our allies and make a difference, we will need submarines as part of that mix.
If we didn't have submarines today, I suspect a number of people in Canada would be saying, Admiral, we have the longest coastline in the world. Why is it we don't have submarines when 41 other nations do, with 450 submarines in operation?
Should be. Wait. Start the drill over again. CPO ready. Left deck console
A critical issue for the Navy is training submariners. Days spent training in these sophisticated simulators is, of course, vital to preparing for submarine duty. This simulator in Halifax is roomy compared to the real thing. Retired Lieutenant Sebastien Latulippe taught submariners at the school.
Roger, 45 meters.
It's one thing to bring somebody in the simulator and throw all sorts of flashes at them. And then once you bring them on the submarine alongside, it's a very restricted environment, very tight environment. And some people don't like it there even before they go to sea. So yes, a lot of things that you can simulate in a simulator don't come together for real until you've seen a full day at sea.
And that real-time experience takes more than one day. With Canada's subs either out of commission or operating just a few days a year, it is a key handicap for the Navy.
What keeps me awake at night is those submariners themselves and their families. Are they getting the right training? Are they getting the right opportunities at sea?
This much downtime for these submarines, hasn't this denigrated their skill set?
Yes. This is where I put most of my effort these days, is looking at the health of the submarine community. I will need at least 380 qualified submariners, ideally about 430. Right now I've got about 300. So I need to grow the force. In order to grow the force, I need to have submarines running. And so there's nobody more interested in achieving success in getting Victoria and Windsor to sea on both coasts in 2012 than I.
Sounds like you're not ready to give up on these submarines.
No, Lloyd, it's not about giving up. We're on the cusp of 2012 of having one high readiness submarine, full weapons capable submarine operating on the west coast. That's HMCS Victoria. The same capability on the east coast, HMCS Windsor, and we'll see Chicoutimi coming online, fully weaponized and capable in 2013, with the 4th boat in deep maintenance on the west coast.
But it seems to me these promises have been made before, over a long period of time. 2010, 2011, as late as June 2011, in fact. Why should we believe now that what you say is really going to happen, that there will be one on the west coast and one on the east coast very shortly?
That's a really good question. And what I can tell you, Lloyd, is you know, the motto of the Canadian Navy is ready, I ready. Okay? That's in our DNA. And so we know that Canadians expect a submarine capability for Canada. But we honestly thought that we could do it faster. And I'll be the first to say that I think we overpromised and underdelivered.
Later this month, Vice Admiral Paul Madison will release the Navy's report on what happened when the Corner Brook hit the ocean floor last June. And sometime next year, the Navy is promising the first firing of a live torpedo by a Victoria-class submarine. We'll be right back.